Today, I'm going to watch Pauline Hanson's A Super Progressive Movie so that you don't have to. If you know me from any of my social media, you know I don't like Pauline Hanson and I don't like One Nation. So yeah, I am probably coming at this with a bit of bias. And there's probably going to be a whole bunch of you that are going to claim that I'm too woke to understand the jokes and that no progressives find anything funny, right? But, well, you can jog off with that argument because my favourite comedians are still Dave Chappelle and Anthony Jeselnik.
Have you ever dropped a baby?
I grew up on South Park, Family Guy, American Dad. There's nothing that's going to really faze me. But I'm interested to see whether all the hype about this movie is actually worth all the hype, whether it is actually funny or whether there's an actual decent message behind it. So let's jump in together and see. Okay, a Pauline production. Is this her actual company? Let me find out here. Well, would you look at what I've found? Pauline Hanson in hot water again over controversial new anti-woke movie. She failed to declare business interest linked to the new anti-woke animated film. She did not list director roles or shareholdings in 3 separate companies, including one that was this film's production. Starting off strong.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Except Aboriginals, obviously.
So right off the bat, this argument about Aboriginal culture not somehow having as much value because they didn't have agriculture or flying cars or big temples or something like that. That's a pretty lazy argument and doesn't actually take into the history of the world of how inventions kind of circumnavigated the globe. And it really says a lot about yourself if you can't appreciate a culture that lived in harmony with their surroundings. And sure, it wasn't all peace, love and unity, right? It was a giant tapestry of many different nations. So there's a lot of crazy history and, well, history that would all be very valuable if we learn, I would think. Okay. So I get that they're trying to share this story from the progressive side, right? Like, after all, it is a super progressive movie. But the way they've depicted the English here, looking like The Walking Dead, top marks.
And a few lone Aboriginals forged a radical new alliance with the gays, the trans, the non-binaries, feminist influencers on TikTok.
This has to be Abby Chatfield, right? Well done, made the movie. But hey, comment who these other two are, because I have no idea. But pulling the old duck face pose, it makes me kind of question their knowledge about what TikTok is and how old the people were that wrote this movie. Because have influencers done that since like 2010, maybe?
So begun the culture war. They fought on the internet. They fought on the streets.
Interesting they're depicting protests as being, it looks pretty small and useless there, because this is one of those main narratives that the right continuously pushes these days, is that the protests are getting in the way, they're costing the government too much money to police them. So which is it? Is it costing taxpayers too much money and they're inconvenient, or are they small and useless?
They fought all the time and got up early every day to win battles of ideas with logical and coherent arguments.
Okay, I like that. Nice early start. And I see the Greens here are getting a shout out underneath the anti-fascist flag, which just, again, is it a bad thing to be against fascism these days?
And so the culture war was won.
Right off the bat, they're coming at you hard with every internet boogeyman argument that they have. From the way they're predicting the groups at the start, the victimhood, flag burning, the Red Scare of communism in there, a laundry list of genders, doctors that clearly aren't qualified, a blind man flying the plane, clear DEI boogeymen there. It's all this extreme stereotype of what they feel super progressives are. They've even got a furry in down here walking in the park. That's the big joke so far. It's just stereotypes.
Yes! Hey. I love begging for forgiveness. Oh!
It's got to be Peter Dutton, right? This ghoul at the front. Comment who these other blokes are, though. But that's definitely Peter Dutton.
It's the least we can do for all those centuries of shitting on everyone else. I'm starting to think these people might be racist.
Yo, is that Purple Pingers?
Screen Australia would never fund a film with you as the protagonist. You're a white, cisgendered, straight male.
They're trying to claim that Screen Australia wouldn't fund a movie with a straight cisgendered white male, as though the movie Australia has never existed.
Mansplaining is a very toxic crime.
You know what we do to mansplainers, don't ya?
Well, to mansplain this scene and the movie so far, it's just filled with internet boogeymen and buzzwords and just this whole weird fear-mongering around extreme stereotypes. Very strange.
I'm your host, Sally Beaversnatch, and I'm having a panic attack right this very minute. I'm sorry. Good to see everyone sitting back, relaxing, chucking down a few booster shots.
Was this movie made in 2020? Are they still going on about this? Again, so much of this movie is internet boogeymen based off crazy stereotypes and fear-mongering that they have in their own head. Like, in their idea of a perfect progressive paradise, a straight white male would be killed for simply being a straight white male. That's how much they're playing the victim in this little imagined scenario here. It's all very far-fetched and just made up from the fear-mongering that's been jammed into their brains.
It's time for some truth-telling.
They've really worked overtime with this mythology to fit as many buzzwords as possible into this world's mythology.
This ain't a progressive paradise. This is a progressive bubble.
And it just brings to mind, like, I can almost imagine them all sitting around the writer's room with a big billboard and all the little buzzwords that they've wanted to use throughout the whole movie, and they ticked off like 50% of them in just explaining this mythology. I'm sure they all went to the pub and celebrated after that.
Now come on, white boy. It's time for us to step into the real world.
Oh, would you look at that? The only time that Pauline Hanson will ever be Prime Minister of Australia in her own little fantasy.
Shall we?
Did Pauline voice this herself? How'd you look at that? She did. Great work. Wonder though if that was done during Parliament time, because she's got one of the worst records of showing up and actually doing a job in Parliament, so who knows?
This great country's a melting pot of culture. Now, if you want to have a nuanced conversation about population growth, let's have it. But if you want to talk down about our Pan-Pacific neighbours, you can walk off my campsite right now.
I see what's going on here. Got to subvert expectations because obviously the right is open to a nuanced discussion about immigration, unlike, of course, the stereotypes that the progressives might have about them.
Cheers to being a white Australian male. What's with the emphasis on white?
Because how dare progressives judge them on extreme stereotypes when the first 30 minutes of this film have been extreme progressive stereotypes as the butt of every single joke. But also weird that this bloke here says Pan-Pacific neighbours. It's a very interesting term because Pan-Pacific is a really kind of outdated term, and it generally refers to all the countries that border the Pacific Ocean. And you can see here that it excludes a whole bunch of other nations. And if you had to use the term Asia-Pacific, which is really the more correct modern term, then it would have incorporated Indian subcontinent, for example. Or if you'd simply stated our Asian neighbours, you can see on this map here that it includes certain Middle Eastern regions. So they're trying to be sneaky and show that they're not racist by using the term Pan-Pacific. But by using that term specifically, they're allowing themselves to avoid their base getting angry at them for loving and being inclusive of other Asian countries that their base doesn't quite like. Very sneaky.
Don't welcome me to my own country. I've been welcome all along.
Alright, that whole song's ridiculous because anyone argues the welcome to country on the basis of I was born here, I'm Australian, it's my country too, doesn't understand the actual reasoning behind a welcome to country. And again, it seems like one of the main themes of this whole movie is don't judge us by our stereotypes. But then they trip over their own feet again by using a stuck in a bubble argument of being against the welcome to country. It just, the whole film so far lacks a massive degree of self-awareness.
This place is racist. Really? Are you sure? Yeah, look, choco babies.
They really are salty that they can't have their racist food names. My God, man, how long ago did all that change? And they're still going on about it.
Occupied.
Ah! There's a man in the woman's toilets!
There better not be!
Yeah, well, my
So
face-
the depiction of like the Englishman within that first hero story, that was from the crazy progressives' ideal of what real Australians and the colonisers look like. But now we're meant to be in the real Australia, right? So this bloke here, who's a complete drunken mess that's pissed himself, is he what the creators are depicting as real Australians?
I feel pretty stupid. Ah, don't worry about it. Happens to every lefty at some point. Victimhood feeds on grievance. Once it takes hold, it hollows you out till there's nothing left. Also, it turns you into a real dickhead.
Victimhood turns you into a real dickhead, does it? Like, for instance, making an entire movie about being the victim of the progressives' ideals and silly stereotypes.
And that's the very true story of what happened to our people.
I hate Australia! I hate colonialism! I hate white people!
Yeah, that's right.
Again,
Don't worry,
they
John.
fall right back into playing the victim in their own movie over this like internet boogeyman argument that truth-telling can only be told in a negative light and will only result in Aboriginal people hating white people. So again, they just said victimhood turns you into a real dickhead, and then in their own movie have a victimhood narrative for white men. Hang on. Those Australian flags are backwards on all the helicopters. Great attention to detail there from the supposed Aussie patriots that made this film.
It was the white thing to do. Ew.
Yeah. That's like the only bit of self-awareness they've had this entire movie.
Your ancestors were convicts, just like you.
Really?
Yeah, see? Look what your ancestors went through.
I had no idea.
Where's your scholarships and special handouts?
Is this what keeps them up at night? Like, this is the big fear? And to the point of convict handouts, yeah, they often got given land grants when they finished their sentence. And you can find some information on that just here. I'll put the link in the description below. Free settlers and ex-convicts of good conduct and disposition to the industry were entitled to a land grant. So yeah, if your ancestors were convicts, they may have already got their handout. And if they didn't, well, you were lucky enough to be born in Australia instead of England. So, you win. And what do they mean by...
Looks to me like you've had everyone else's history rammed down your throat and never your own. That sucks.
Because, at least in my day, we learnt a ton about convict Australia. We had whole school excursions down to Botany Bay. We went to Old Sydney Town. We stayed the night in the Hyde Park Barracks and scared the shit out of each other that there was ghosts around. Hell, while even scrubbing the decks, on one of these tall ship cruise things, yeah, this one, me and my mate were down just under here scrubbing the deck, and one of the actors that were being part of the crew walked all the way, climbed all the way up here. Luckily, the captain of the ship said, "There's a spot over there that you missed." And so me and my mate moved literally like half a foot over. An old mate from the crew fell from the top here, went bonk, bonk, bonk on all the mast on the way down, and thump, literally landed, and presumably we thought was either dead or he's at least broken everything right next to us. It caused fucking chaos for all the students that were on board and the actors and everything, right? Immediately breaking character, obviously. But on the way back, we're trying to sail this ship all the way back to get the guy to hospital. The crew thought it would be an amazing little time to give us a history lesson and this is what they said to us. They said if that had happened on the journey from England to Australia back in the day, we would have just thrown him overboard. But that's going to help a whole bunch of like 13-year-olds process what had just gone on in a very healthy way. So yeah, those lessons are stuck in the noggin. We learnt a lot about convict Australia. What we don't learn is the entire truth.
How dare you, Greta? I've been oppressed my entire life.
Greta being in this movie, again, adds weight to what I'm saying this whole movie is based around. It's all based on internet boogeymen for the right. They're just using these exaggerated stereotypes of progressives whilst also trying to push the message that we shouldn't be using stereotypes to judge people.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, except for the fact that I don't have any legs!
Right, so their idea of Alice Springs here, it looks pretty nice. But really interesting that they chose chess, public green spaces, opera, the arts, culinary culture, science, and even almond lattes to get their point across of what a good city looks like. Because in reality, if you go and check out the One Nation policies, nothing they have lines up with any of what they just showed. But I will give them the boomerang ride's a pretty good gag.
He's alive!
He found the victimhood.
But I just, going back because I've only just made this realisation, but this guy here is meant to be Mark Latham, right? I'm guessing this is Malcolm Roberts. They're doing Malcolm Roberts a service there, by the way they made him look, but my God, have they gone all in on Latham? Not too dissimilar, but damn.
We need to stop him before it's too late.
Wait, and sorry, this bloke here, that's Barnaby, right? Pauline's really giving it to her new recruits, isn't she? Latham and Barnaby in this. Oh my God, brutal.
You're right. Let's get an abortion.
Yes! Us paedophile elites love a child sacrifice!
Sir, what should we do with Pauline Hanson?
That is a really interesting thing to put in your movie there, Pauline. Wait a minute. Who's that? Surely that person, whoever that was, had nothing to do with Pauline. Right? Surely. No connection to Pauline and One Nation whatsoever. Mustn't have.
The more dependent he is, the more powerful I become. It's the victimhood industrial complex.
You notice how One Nation often goes out and pushes this idea that whites are being taken over. You're a victim of immigration and big government and this entire movie. Yeah. Victimhood industrial complex.
She hates all us progressives. No, she doesn't. She just hates the victimhood and the identity politics that fetishizes it.
Notice how they had the character say that Pauline hates the identity politics that fetishizes victimhood, because identity politics is pretty much all she does. So they had to specify the victimhood part.
Shut up and give me some of that patriarchal overreach.
Get a room, you two. Nah, isn't love grand?
Oh, I've got to get out of Melbourne.
Wait, even in a movie that she made herself with a message about accepting who the right really is and being in the real world, Pauline can't bring herself to be happy for the LGBTQ couple at the end. Amazing. Well, that was a pretty confused mess of a movie. It was this constant messaging that real Australians are not just the stereotypes that you progressive lefties have about us, so don't unfairly judge us.
Look, that is the world's most racist flag.
Backed up immediately by stereotypes of progressive lefties as the butt of the joke.
She's a woman. She's a good driver.
Like, they're trying to beat you over the head with a stick, but then trip over that stick themselves. They've then wrapped the entire film in this victimhood narrative, but then it doesn't seem like they've taken any moment of self-reflection at all. Like, Pauline was a lady who started her whole political career with this speech.
I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians.
She fearmongers off the back of what is essentially victimhood. The idea of losing our Australian culture is cultural victimhood. Many supporters of hers and the rallies she attends fear that whites are going to become the minority in this country. They go around cities like Melbourne or Naarm or Pretoria and film crowds in the city playing Spot the Aussie. Like, oh, woe is me that I can't see someone else with my same skin colour. That's playing the victim of multiculturalism. They even use the main white guy in the film, Pete, who, when he finds out that his ancestors were convicts and is convinced that progressives have unfairly treated him his whole life, becomes the ultimate victim. So if you are one of those white people out there that complain that immigrants are coming to take over my culture and progressives don't care about us and they're all going to steal our job,
They took our job!
well, that film just called you out as the ultimate wearers of victimhood. And I'm not sure the filmmakers intended on that or not, because often, like I just said, they're tripping over their own messaging throughout the whole film. But if they did mean that, well, bravo. Because the whole idea of victimhood is tiresome, and soaking yourself in self-pity, well, that's bad for your mental health. Words matter. What you tell yourself matters, and you can rewire your entire brain with the right thoughts. But ignoring the situation isn't healthy either. That you can't ignore your way out of mental health issues, just like you can't ignore your way out of physical health issues. And if you do, both of those are going to come back and bite you in the ass. And it's the same with recognition of history. Ignoring it doesn't help. And you might want to say, well, shit happens, just got to keep on trucking. But to keep on trucking, you at a very base level need to recognize that shit did happen in order for you to keep on moving forward, or else you are just trucking blindly and running into the same problems over and over again. Now, one of the main themes throughout this whole film was truth-telling, and they highlighted their fear of this with the 3 little Aboriginal kids, because in their mind, obviously, if you're truth-telling, it's going to be told in a way that just results in people hating white men, right? But is ignorance really bliss? Pauline says herself in the movie while showing Murray around Alice Springs.
Pretty cool what you can achieve with sensible policies, hey?
Cool. I actually agree with you there, Pauline. Sensible policy should be at the forefront of our political landscape. But how can you make sensible policy if you cannot recognise the reality of the situation? You can't, because without knowing and agreeing upon the reality of the situation, you can't agree on what steps to take next to resolve the situation for a better future. And we see this denial of reality coming from one nation all the time, with things like climate change or medical care like vaccinations, which they dive into deeply in this movie, or abortions, and so much more. So throughout this entire movie, they are preaching ideals that they themselves do not live by, to make out like you're the crazy one if you believed anything otherwise. Ignore all the evidence of history in the past, right? Just keep on trucking. Now, I'll wrap this whole thing up with what I did agree about in this film. I've been fortunate enough to grow up in regional New South Wales, in a tiny town, and in the mornings you could spend them down at the beach and surfing, and afternoons you'd find yourself out in the bush riding horses or motos. I've travelled all across New South Wales and southeast Queensland working in roles that have had me talking to ladies that own incense stores in Mullumbimby, and then the next day I'd be out talking to CEOs of building supply companies based in Lismore. 2 very different people. I've worked and travelled in Victoria, South Australia, far north Queensland, and well, yeah, I've still got a lot of the country left to see. And as a white guy, it's been extremely rare that my skin colour has ever been an issue. And even when it has, like being told I've been crazy for walking around certain suburbs in Sydney, it's been for a very brief moment. But sure, I do recognise that there can be issues there. But during this time, I've heard a lot, from casual to full-blown racism, and from a basic to an abundant love and respect for everyone. And in the real Australia, at least the one that I know, I've experienced a culture of larrikins, where having a laugh at your own expense can be of big advantage because we often don't take things too seriously. I've experienced people willing to lend a hand in even the toughest of circumstances, having lived through the Brisbane floods. And I've experienced an underdog culture that prides itself on giving people a fair go. I've been fortunate to have friendships with people of all creeds and all colours, and I consider myself extremely lucky to have been born in this country. For anyone that's travelled around the world, you'd know we do live in the lucky country. So the part that I do agree with in this film is we have to get out of our bubble. I think we're pretty fortunate to live in a country where, even if you haven't had the opportunity to travel, you can experience many of the world's cultures right here. I think that's part of what makes Australia so unique. From the land itself to our food and culture, there's so much variety. And when it comes to the people who call this nation home, whether new or old, I believe we have a lot more in common than what the media and politicians would let on that we do. We do have an incredibly long history that doesn't need to be romanticised, but recognised. And that history has often been a tough one, lived out on a very harsh land. The story of this multicultural nation has always been through its ups and downs, and I'm sure we'll continue to ride those ups and downs into the future. But one of the lessons that I do believe we can learn from the past is that we should start from a place of being more respectful, more welcoming, more open to the people who are coming to call this country home. Invite them to join into our communities, into our way of life, share our values, share our culture, and show support for them. And in return, we'll be much quicker in getting to a place of mutual respect and shared love for this country. I do believe that the majority of people in this country are good, kind, caring people, and that it is just a very small, vocal minority that are sowing division, and this movie does not help bridge that divide. We don't need to brush off our differences. We don't need to try and sweep our history under the rug. We need to face up to it and aim to come together in respect for a shared reality and a shared future. That's it for now. If you have liked this video, please do like, comment and subscribe, because I will be sharing more long form content on this channel in the future, all aimed at trying to help people understand the world of misinformation and lies from media and politics around this country and around the world. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.